Well, I think Don changed the face of dance, quite frankly. He didn't create a step, he created a style, and a genre, and that genre which brought a street dance to a very high artistic level. In 1982, executives told Toni Basil she was too old to be a cheerleader on camera. She wore her real high school uniform anyway and shot the Mickey video in one take. It hit #1 and changed pop culture forever. For decades, Mickey played at every football game, every commercial, every nostalgia playlist. But she got pennies. In 2017, she discovered her music rights had been shuffled between offshore companies like poker chips. By the time she won in court, she was 78 years old. This is the story of a hit song that made millions for everyone except the woman who created it. Toni Basil wasn't born in a hospital or even at home. She was born backstage on top of costume trunks during a matinee show in a crumbling old theater in Philadelphia on September 22, 1943. Her mother, Irene, was performing when the labor started, and the show had to stop. Her father, Michael, was playing music in Atlantic City when he got the telegram. He walked out mid-song, left his orchestra behind, and hitchhiked all the way back. The family name was Basil, but Ellis Island changed it. Nobody talked much about the rumors of her grandfather's ties to protection rackets in Chicago. Irene's side came from vaudeville acts that dangled from ropes and leaped through the air for pennies. They barely made it. They were poor, always hungry, and always moving. Toni cried for the first time, just as the Theat's pipe organ let out a low, eerie note. Some backstage folks said it was a curse. Others called it fate. Months before that chaotic birth, Irene had done something most people wouldn't believe. 8 months pregnant and visibly ill, she still took the stage at the Palace Theater in Chicago, performing a 25-feet aerial somersault while spinning through the air, with her legs swollen and her stomach heavy. Twice during practice, she nearly fell. Her cousin Eddie Fay would later admit she'd taken black market amphetamines just to push through the pain. At the climax of the act, Irene had to catch a 30-pound sandbag mid-air. The force of it hitting her was enough to draw blood. She finished the act and collapsed, bleeding through her costume. 6 weeks later, Toni was born early. That performance wasn't just dangerous. It was the moment that hardwired into Toni a need to perform, even if it hurt. Between 1948 and 1953, Toni didn't have a home. The Basil family moved from city to city, living backstage in converted dressing rooms barely large enough to lie down. At the Fox Theater in Detroit, Toni shared space with circus animals and got ringworm from elephant bedding. Her bed in Cleveland was a tile-floored basement that used to be a morgue. She ate mostly popcorn and stale hot dogs left over from concession stands. In 5 years, she changed schools 23 times, never long enough to make a real friend. She learned survival from burnt-out performers backstage, not reading or math, but how to dodge spotlights, fix costumes, and fake confidence. By 1949, they were desperate. Michael couldn't find music gigs, they were almost $900 in debt, and feared the worst from local loan sharks. So, Irene came up with an idea. She sent 6-year-old Toni out to sell candy and programs in theater lobbies. Technically illegal, but they needed the money. One night at the Palmer House Hotel, Toni danced for rich guests who tossed coins at her feet. She made $23 but got painful blisters on both feet. Later, Irene wrote it off as volunteer work to avoid getting in trouble. But theater managers knew, and instead of reporting them, they used it to underpay the entire family for years. Then something happened that changed everything. During a rehearsal in February 1951, Irene forgot her steps. The music stopped. Toni, just 7, ran on stage and filled the silence with a tap routine she had memorized in secret. The crowd stood up cheering. Lou Schwartz, a booking agent in the audience, offered her a solo contract right there, $75 a week. Irene, watching from the wings, slapped her hard across the face and accused her of stealing the spotlight. From that moment, their roles flipped. Toni was the performer bringing in money. Irene was the jealous one, hiding shoes and whispering to others that her daughter had an attitude problem. Michael stayed quiet but started to treat Toni like an investment. Nothing between them was the same again. In 1950, the family moved to Las Vegas. Her father had landed a regular orchestra job at the Sahara Hotel for $125 a week. By day, Toni went to school. By night, she was in the smoky Congo room watching dancers practice between rounds of poker and cocktails. Sometimes she rehearsed splits between slot machines while cocktail waitresses in feathers stepped over her. At 8 years old, she saw a man get beaten up in a casino hallway. It didn't scare her. It just taught her not to trust anyone too much. At Las Vegas High School, Toni tried to make cheerleading serious. She added stunts that nobody had attempted before, pushing her body to the limit. Some players made fun of her, calling her routines too girly. During a homecoming game, she fell midair and smashed her ankle badly. Her mother had ended her dancing career after a similar accident. Toni showed up the next week anyway, limping, her ankle wrapped in stolen athletic tape. Money was always a problem. Between 1958 and 1960, her father lost $8,000 gambling, almost triple his annual salary. Toni once found IUS in his violin case. and realized dance lessons might stop. So, she began stashing coins she found around the casino, keeping them in a buried coffee can behind their apartment. She paid for lessons herself, $5 a session. One Christmas, her father pawned her mother's ring to pay off debts. Nobody talked about it, but Toni remembered every detail. She started sneaking into Sahara rehearsals through a side entrance, hiding behind curtains to watch the dancers. One day, while practicing moves she'd copied from the lead performer, she heard her parents screaming through the wall. Her mom was threatening divorce. Her dad was talking about money he owed. She cleaned up blood from where he'd punched the wall. That night convinced her that financial freedom wasn't optional. It was the only path forward. She graduated in 1961, top of her class. Instead of a cap and gown, she wore her cheerleader uniform. Her speech was called Dancing Through Conformity, and she used it to criticize the system. UNLV had offered her a full scholarship, but she turned it down. She'd saved up $400 from side gigs. Her plan was simple: go to Los Angeles and dance. That same year, she tried to run away and auditioned for a burlesque show on Fremont Street. Someone told her dancers there earned $200 a week. She was 16, using a fake ID. The talent scout said she could start that night. Her father found her before the show and pulled her out. He was furious. She never forgave him for not letting her make her own decisions, but people in town never forgot it either. Toni Basil wasn't afraid of risk, even if it meant scandal. At 18, she got cast as a dancer on a local Vegas TV show. After 3 episodes, she was fired. Producers said she was too provocative. Broke and embarrassed, she hitchhiked to LA with $47 and a small suitcase. She slept on floors, juggled part-time jobs, and auditioned every chance she got. In 1963, she got work on a Rat Pack film. She wasn't credited, but she danced opposite Frank Sinatra. Off camera, Sinatra wouldn't leave her alone. Crew noticed, but nobody said anything. He had too much power. She dealt with it by keeping her head down and never being alone with him. By 1964, she was dancing on Shindig, a rock show that ran on ABC. Backstage was chaos. Musicians were popping pills to stay awake, and fights between bands sometimes broke out during tapings. One time, she got caught in the middle of a fist fight and twisted her ankle again. That same year, she was hired on Viva Las Vegas and shared scenes with Elvis. His entourage tried isolating her during breaks. One of his men invited her to a private audition. She knew what that meant and declined. It wasn't the first time she'd had to dodge that kind of trap. Later that year, during the Tommy Show, she found herself in the middle of a different kind of tension, this time about race. James Brown was furious that he was performing before the Rolling Stones, seeing it as a slap in the face. Toni was one of the few people he trusted. She stayed out of it, but the experience taught her just how deep the industry's racial divide really was. In another job that same year, while filming a beach party movie, her costume ripped mid-dance and exposed more than intended. Gossip columns twisted the story into something it wasn't, and for years, directors assumed she was fine with party girl roles. That one accident nearly derailed her credibility as a serious choreographer. Toni Basil's big break came when she danced as a giantess in Village of the Giants in 1965. The movie only had a $75,000 budget, but it became a cult classic, especially because of her go-go dance with a young Ron Howard. Behind the scenes, things were messy. Parties at the Beverly Hills Hotel got wild. Basil said she once saw a teenage extra collapse on set, probably from drugs. It shook her. She began keeping her distance from the scene that was quickly turning reckless. Still, the film earned $1.2 million and gave her the kind of fame that opened doors. But those doors weren't always easy to walk through. In 1967, she signed on for The Cool Ones, another dance-focused film. It had a big studio budget, $2.3 million, but it was a disaster. She quit before filming was finished, walking away from $15,000, which would be worth over $140,000 today. Rumors said one of the producers crossed the line during rehearsals. After that, word got around Hollywood that she was difficult and she stopped getting film offers for a while. The movie tanked anyway, barely making back $800,000. But her choice became legend among other dancers. She was one of the first to say no to how women were treated in the business. Then came Head in 1968. The Monkees were trying to shake off their pop image with something edgy, and they brought in Basil for a trippy dance scene with Davy Jones. But the set was chaos. The band was fighting, gear was flying, and Basil had to choreograph around people storming off set. One of the fights even shut down filming for a full day. When the movie came out, it flopped hard, just $16,000 in its first run. But her dance stood out. Years later, she said it felt like psychedelic hell, but it gave her ideas that she would later use when directing her own music videos. She appeared briefly in Easy Rider in 1969, playing a brothel worker in New Orleans. The budget was small, just $400,000, but the shoot was intense. Dennis Hopper, who directed the film, was using cocaine and brought real guns to set. Basil remembered being scared during one scene when he started improvising lines and waving a weapon that wasn't in the script. They filmed at a real brothel, and it took 2 days to get the footage right. She only earned $300 for the job, but the film blew up, earning $60 million. Still, she never forgot the fear of that shoot, and she warned others to stay away from directors who were out of control. Her next big film was 5 Easy Pieces in 1970 with Jack Nicholson. The movie was shot in Oregon and California and had a $1.6 million budget. Nicholson was deep into method acting, and it made things tense. Basil had to work closely with him during some of the most emotional scenes, and she later said his flirtations felt more real than scripted. She shut it down, and director Bob Rafelson backed her up. But that might have cost her chances with the production company in the future. The film went on to earn 5 Oscar nominations and made nearly $9 million. But her experience on set reminded her just how unbalanced the power was in Hollywood. That same year, Basil took a role in Myra Breenage, one of the most controversial films of its time. The studio spent over $5 million on it. She had choreographed some dance scenes, but the director, Michael Sarn, kept rewriting things behind her back. He added scenes to make her dances seem more sexual than what she had agreed to. She only found out after the fact during post-ep production. When she spoke out in a December Variety interview, studios turned against her. For more than 2 years, she couldn't land major roles. The movie barely made $4.2 million and was panned by critics. But her warnings about Hollywood's deceptive practices stuck. She had stood her ground again. In 1971, things changed. She met Don Campbell, who had invented the locking dance style. Together, they formed the Lockers, but not without tension. The male dancers didn't like taking direction from a woman, even though Basil had serious training. During one heated moment, she locked Campbell out of rehearsals. He came back and agreed she would be. That moment changed street dance forever. Performing at clubs in Compton during 1972 and 1973 nearly broke them. At one gig, people threw bottles at them. Basil, the only white dancer in the group, was the main target. She protected the younger dancers, once even hiding them behind speakers while chaos erupted. Don Campbell got injured and needed surgery. They were making $50 a night, split 7 ways. It was brutal, but it gave them real credibility on the street. Then came Soul Train in 1973. The show made locking famous, but Don Campbell was banned after demanding better pay for dancers. Basil used her own savings, over $2,000, to keep the group going. She convinced producers to let Campbell return, but only if she handled the business. That shift in power created tension, especially with the other male dancers. In 1974, producers wanted them to water things down. ABC asked Basil to cut out the sharp moves, saying they were too aggressive. She refused. They lost out on a $50,000 TV deal and more bookings in Vegas. Bookers wanted them in matching suits, not suspenders and wild colors. She said no. It hurt them financially, but the street respected them even more. By 1975, the group had fans in Hollywood. Basil's solo tape got to David Bowie, but someone in the group leaked it without telling her. Members quit in protest. She flew to London to meet Bowie, and the group fell apart. Don Campbell started a rival crew, and they fought over the name in court for 2 years. The worst part, Basil let others take credit. She didn't list herself as co-founder or choreographer because she didn't want to seem bossy. That silence cost her. When hip-hop history was being written in the 80s, her name was missing. Even when she got a Lifetime Award in 2009, they talked about Mickey, not her dance legacy. She later said hiding her role was the biggest mistake of her career. In 1973, she choreographed for American Graffiti. It was supposed to feel like real 1950s teen life. She fought with George Lucas, who wanted cleaner moves. She brought in the real stuff she remembered from school dances. The shoot took 28 nights. It was exhausting, but the film made $140 million. And the dancing felt real because she pushed for it. Then came Bo's Diamond Dogs. Tours in 1974, Basil's choreography had to match wild props like bridges and mechanical sets. Bowie was deep into cocaine, and rehearsals got intense. He fired crew members mid-show. When things broke, Basil had to improvise. Her work held the tour together, and her choreography became part of rockstage history. In 1977, Tina Turner secretly worked with Basil while still tied to Ike. Basil noticed bruises. She never said anything publicly, knowing how dangerous it was. Their sessions helped Tina prepare for a solo future. When people learned about it years later, Ike reportedly made threats. During the Rose in 1978, Bette Midler broke down often, while trying to portray a rock star destroyed by fame. Basil ended up helping her emotionally, not just choreographing. That bond lasted decades. Basil choreographed Midler's Vegas show in 2008. Then there was Saturday Night Live in 1976. She performed live, and John Belushi, who was drunk, crashed her routine mid-show. He tried to tackle her on stage. She stayed calm and turned it into part of the act. That moment became SNL legend. In 1981, Toni Basil was already a known name in Hollywood, having choreographed big productions and built strong industry ties. But when Radio Choice Records offered her just $10,000 as an advance for her entire word-of-mouth album, it was a shock. For someone with her background, the amount wasn't just low, it was insulting. But she took the deal. The label had a tiny budget, so producer Greg Matt had to play most of the instruments himself just to save money. Things got worse when Radio Choice shut down in 1984, and her royalty payments were left hanging. What seemed like a simple decision to put out her music turned into the start of a 4-decade legal fight. The $10,000 wasn't even what top artists earned for one song. But she moved ahead, unaware that she'd be battling over the rights to her most iconic track for the rest of her life. That track was Mickey, originally a 1979 song called Kitty by a band named Ray. It was written by Mike Chapman and Nicky Chin from a male perspective. Toni flipped it. She turned it into a cheer anthem, swapped the gender, added the famous chant from her Las Vegas high school days, "Oh, Mickey, you're so fine," and built an entire new arrangement. But when it came to credit, Chapman and Chin insisted her input was minor. They refused to add her as a That one decision cost her millions in royalties over the next 40 years. Even though her changes completely transformed the song, she was shut out. In 2020, she finally released her own version called Hey Mickey, using original cheerleaders from Dorsey High to reclaim some of what she lost. In 1982, she directed the music video herself. She was 38, wore her real high school cheer uniform, and choreographed every part. The video was done in one continuous take. Executives told her she was too old to be a cheerleader and the concept wouldn't work, but she ignored them. MTV had just launched a few months earlier. By the time Mickey came out in September, the timing couldn't have been better. The video exploded. It became one of MTV's most played clips. In December, the song hit #1 on Billboard, pushing Lionel Richie off the top. But underneath the success, the problems were growing. Because Radio Choice had folded, the money she spent producing the video and promoting the song never came back. And it didn't.